They said I was not the right kind of neighbor. Those words stuck to the inside of my skull like splinters. It was a beautiful morning in late spring, the sort where the sun smells like warm pine and the lake looks like a promise. I was drinking my coffee on the deck of my half-finished cabin when the new letter from the Bellcrest Heights Homeowners Association arrived. I could already feel trouble radiating through the envelope before I even opened it. My name is Ethan Rhodes. I'm 49 years old, a former high school shop teacher, a widower, and according to a group of suburban commanders with clipboards, a menace to neighborhood harmony. After my wife died 3 years ago, I sold the house we had shared in the city and bought a small lot beside Lake Bellcrest. She had drawn the design for a modest A-frame cabin with a pencil on a diner napkin during one of her better weeks between chemo sessions. The plan was to finish it together, but life did not keep that promise. When grief threatened to eat me alive, I decided to keep building anyway. She had wanted a quiet place, and I was determined to make it real. The day I moved my tools into the cabin, a silver SUV stopped in front of my driveway. Out stepped a woman in pastel sportswear who looked as if she were on her way to a corporate boardroom that happened to be outdoors. She held a binder thick enough to serve as body armor and smiled like a judge who had already decided the verdict. "Welcome to Bellcrest Heights," she said. "I'm Pamela Van Dorn, Association President. This is the covenant package you are responsible for." That word covenant sounded strange to me. I had joined neighborhoods before, but never a religion of lawn fertilization. Still, I thanked her and carried my toolbox inside. For several months, nothing much happened. I worked my teaching job, returned each afternoon to cut lumber and rebuild the deck, and answered polite hellos from joggers who passed without stopping. I even started to believe that peace had found me again. Then the letters started coming. Violation notice number 1. Non-compliant exterior color scheme. Violation number 2. Unauthorized solar array. Violation number 3. Lumber debris visible from the street. Each fine doubled from the one before. The tone of the letters was sugar on top of barbed wire. I called the HOA office and left 3 messages. No one answered. By the 3rd notice, I decided to attend one of their public meetings at the community center. It smelled like disinfectant and fake coffee. Pamela ran the session like a courtroom. When my name came up, she smiled pleasantly and used phrases such as community, consistency, and architectural integrity. Then she said what she truly meant. "Mr. Rhodes, while we sympathize with your circumstances, this is a community built on visual harmony. We must maintain standards for the sake of collective property value." That phrase, collective property value, hit me harder than I expected. My wife used to laugh at the obsession people have with appearances. "You can polish emptiness all day, and it still weighs nothing," she once said, standing in that room, surrounded by nodding heads. I understood exactly what she meant. I went home and hung the new sign on the wall beside the others. One evening turned wall of shame. I figured I was dealing with a control addict and decided to stay quiet. 3 weeks later, I saw Pamela talking to a man behind the sales office. I recognized him as Kenneth Dorr, the HOA treasurer, who also happened to own the local real estate agency. They were whispering, papers passing between them, and I caught one sentence as I walked by. "Once that last lot is cleared, we can approve the resort contract." That was when the first real spark of suspicion lit in my head. I drove to the county clerk's office the next morning. The document archive smelled like old dust and government fatigue. The clerk, a woman named Mary Ann, who remembered teaching my students a decade ago, helped me pull the property maps. A redlined area called Bellcrest Expansion Phase 2 had been filed 3 months earlier. My cabin sat squarely in the center of it. Pamela and Kenneth were trying to sell the land beneath everyone's homes to a developer. My presence as a non-compliant owner was blocking millions of dollars in potential profit. When I returned home, I found "comply or vacate" spray painted across my mailbox in bright orange. My camera, hidden beneath the eaves, captured 2 figures at 2:12 a.m., both wearing local maintenance jackets. One of them moved with the same posture as Kenneth. I took the footage to the sheriff. The deputies watched politely, shrugged, and promised to look into it. Nothing happened. That night, sitting at the kitchen counter covered with my wife's old sketches, I realized I could not fight this war alone. I called an old friend, Claire Mayo, who had gone from teaching civics to becoming a lawyer specializing in municipal property law. When I explained what was happening, She was quiet for a full minute before saying, "Ethan, they are using the standard harassment sequence. They plan to exhaust you financially or psychologically until you sell. We can turn that around, but you have to document everything." From that day on, my cabin became an evidence lab. Claire filed for a disclosure of HOA financial records, and I began building a timeline thick enough to choke their corruption. I learned that Pamela had reclassified routine maintenance as special assessments, funneling hundreds of thousands into a consulting firm owned by Kenneth's brother. They both received management bonuses for every new development phase. The bigger their empire, the fatter their pockets. When I confronted her at the next meeting, cameras from a local news crew I had quietly invited were already rolling. Pamela began with her usual speech about safety and aesthetics, but sweat had turned her hair rigid before she reached the second paragraph. I asked a simple question. "Madam President, can you explain why the association is paid more in consultant fees than the cost of every maintenance project combined?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. She stammered, claimed it was accounting confusion, and tried to adjourn the meeting. The reporter's microphone appeared beside my shoulder like a courtroom witness. "Is it true, Mrs. Van Dorn," he asked, "that relatives of the HOA board hold all consulting contracts for Bellcrest Heights?" Her denial was half-spoken when Kenneth slipped out the side door. Cameras caught everything. Within 48 hours, the story hit every local news channel. Bellcrest Heights HOA under investigation for fraud and harassment. You would think that was the end. It was only halftime. Pamela grew more desperate. She filed a restraining order claiming I had threatened her life. The judge dismissed it, but the damage was done. My mailbox overflowed with anonymous hate notes. My truck tires were slashed twice. The second time, I sat on the curb beside the flat rubber and realized how grief and rage can feel frighteningly similar. That night, I played an old voice message for my wife. Her voice was rough with chemo fatigue, but it still held that quiet steel. "Do not let cruelty make you cruel," she had said. "Build something better instead." So I built something. With Claire's help and the cooperation of a few decent neighbors who were tired of paying phantom fees, we formed the Bellcrest Restoration Committee, a legal entity under state nonprofit law. We put pressure on the county, filed a joint complaint to the state attorney general, and publicized every detail of the scheme. One by one, the fence-sitters joined. Even the deputy who had once shrugged at my video delivered a sworn statement when he learned his own grandmother's dues were supposed to be funding those fake contracts. The investigation took 9 months. In that time, Pamela resigned, Kenneth vanished to Florida, and the developer canceled his resort project. The state seized the HOA's accounts and refunded homeowners. The association dissolved quietly under court supervision. The morning the news became official, I walked to the lake just as the first lights scattered on the water. The wind was soft enough to move the reeds without breaking them. I poured some of my wife's favorite hazelnut coffee into the water, a simple toast to the woman who had dreamed of this place. "We made it," I told her. They polished their emptiness, but we built something that lasts. Today there is no sign at the entrance, no gate, no board meetings, no binder of covenants. Just neighbors who fix fences together when storms roll in. Solar panels still hum on the roof. The deck smells of cedar, and at night the lake glows with the same stubborn peace my wife carried until her last breath. Sometimes new folks move in and ask why the neighborhood feels different from other communities. I tell them the truth. It is built on freedom instead of fear. It is what happens when people remember that a home belongs to the heart that builds it, not the committee that measures it. And each time I watch another sunset stain the lake gold, I know she would approve.